And good morning. It's about 7 a.m. on the morning of Shabbos on Saturday. The title of this and several more like it will be titled Stand Before White Hair, because God commands you to stand before white hair. And generally, only white haired people like me are going to recall and be able to be witness to one of the major F ups in marketing and in chemical history. I give as my citation for this Human Pharmacology from Molecular to Clinical, Wingard et al., I think published around 1991. Now, when I was a child, small child, early 60s, we tried a new product in my home, which my mother, like me, very sensitive to fragrances, perfumes, as actually any normal human would be, normal, undevolved human would be. We had always been an Ivory soap house, and she began to buy these stupid stuff like Dial, which that antimicrobial in Dial, and 26 other chemical compounds that have been used in hand soaps were all made illegal at least a decade ago. A decade ago. After, 30, 40 years of screwing up the breathing systems of people like me. I'll get to my point, was that in the early 60s, we tried a new product, came in a green bottle, was the first soap we had ever seen that had a pump handle. It was called Physo-Hex, Physo-X, That hex is obviously appears to be for, I think they use cyclohexane in that soap, in that compound. It was the standard surgical scrub for surgeons, apparently for decades before being put on the open market. Now, unfortunately, when those surgeons began to die off and they began to do autopsies of those surgeons, they found that they had spongiform degeneration of their brains. And Physo-Hex was immediately pulled off the market sometime before 1970. It was an absolute must. It was, and you know what? The media never covered it. I never even knew the connection until I read Wingard's et al. Their Human Pharmacology from Molecular to Clinical. Please, you might want to look up. Now, I'm sure they brought it off. They're still using the brand name, the Physo-Hex. But back in the day, Physo-Hex would cause the same symptoms that I talked about on prions or prions. And so, really, only people that are at least 70 years old are going to remember the actual use of Physo-Hex, which causes spongiform brain degeneration. You've never heard about it. You never heard about that failed disaster. I'll try to cover a few more, but I need to really learn to keep my videos short. This is 4 minutes. I'm out. Just remember, Physo-Hex. My citation is the college textbook, Human Pharmacology from Molecular to Clinical, Wingard. I believe that's Wingard, and others. It was at the time, for all through the 90s and the early 2000s, that was the book on pharmacology, where they clearly, without saying it, point out that soybeans are not meant for human consumption. They're too toxic for human consumption. Peanuts also, but there's a lot of good things in that book. So just remember, God commands you to stand before white hair.